catching the crux of
Yeah.
the heart of
Okay.
our
Never know what you
conversation.
want to get though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead and
Yeah.
record it, and then I'll see if I need it.
If we do any recording, everyone has to give permission.
Oh,
to
okay.
be recorded.
Does everyone give permission?
Okay with me?
Yes.
Okay. Lauren, do you mind scrolling back up? Thank you. Okay, so minutes from February. Anyone have any comments or changes in regards to the minutes?
Nope.
Nope.
Julia, do you have anything?
No, I did, but I apparently have lost them.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been long enough. It's hard for me to bring anything up for it.
Well, those
Yeah.
were sent out just a week ago, I think, right, Lauren? Or sometime recently.
What was your question? Sorry.
You sent out the minutes of the February meeting. Well, yeah, that's right. But who can remember what we actually did?
Yeah, that's the problem.
Okay.
Yeah, it looks good to me for that reason, right?
Okay. So do we have a motion to accept the minutes as they are?
I so move.
I second.
Second. All in agreement?
Aye.
Anyone who's not? Okay. We will accept the minutes for February 2nd. And you guys, Lauren, I'm going to go ahead. Oh, no, that's okay. Oh, you know something? I apologize about the written public comments. I see that we did have it on the and I looked at this so many times.
Gordon, sorry, did you have something to add?
Can you unmute me?
Yes, sorry, I just got that. Yeah, I do know I'm in
Thank you.
control.
All right,
of
because yeah, whenever I tried to unmute myself, it said you can't unmute yourself because the host has you muted.
Okay.
So I think I'm now okay.
Okay. I did click
Yeah, it's fixed now.
Okay.
No worries.
Cool. Sorry about that. Okay. So if we go back to the agenda, did anybody want to make a public comment?
Hello, Mike D here. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. I hadn't planned to make a public comment because I had looked at the agenda and it had that you had to click on the link and do the written comments. And I've been protesting that. And so I didn't really have a prepared written comment, but I do appreciate the opportunity to make a public comment on the spot. I think not everybody has access to this technology or knows how to use it. And it necessarily knows that you got to plan ahead of time to put in comments. Some of these comments are required by 5 o'clock, a couple hours before the meeting. Some are required noon of that day. So, all right, I'll stop. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. All right, so meeting dates for the next meeting, which will likely be virtually, scheduled for July 1st. Does anyone see any issues with that date?
Not at this point, but you never know.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Moving forward then, communication. Lauren, is there anything that?
I don't think so under communication. Besides apologizing for my blast of emails the past few days. So.
Yeah, for me, it made sense because we haven't met for so long. So there's a lot of information to get out. So recruitment strategies for new members. Lauren, I'll let you
Yes.
give us an
So just an update for everybody that according to our code, we're allowed to have 7 members that reside in the city, and we can have up to 2 additional members for a total of that don't reside in the city if we feel like they can add to the, the expertise level that we need, or a certain, you know, area of knowledge that they have. So right now we've had 3 people with varying levels of interest in the 2 open board positions. And right now, the mayor, I still need to check in with the mayor to see if he is able to, do Zoom interviews. I think for a while I was going to try and see if we could wait to do in-person interviews. But, I think we should just try and move ahead with, getting people on the board. And if the mayor's all set with doing a Zoom interview, then that process can move forward.
Also, I think he could do an interview just socially distanced.
That's true.
No, there's no reason not to.
Yeah.
And you
Maybe
get a
take a
whole
walk
lot
up.
more. There are real limitations to what you can figure out is really going on with someone when you're doing Zoom. So
hmm
Lauren, would you mind having that conversation with the mayor then? Or,
Yeah.
or would you like one of us to have that conversation?
I can definitely do that. No problem.
I seem to had an issue just a moment. Lauren, I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
Oh, sorry. Sometimes, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
So I just said I'd be happy to have that conversation with the mayor.
Okay, thank you. Okay. And then budget, that's that Lauren, that's
Yeah, I can speak on that as well. So the latest that we've gotten from a citywide standpoint is just that our discretionary spending is limited. So with anything like tree plantings, that's probably going to have to. Richard, can you hear me now a little bit better? Sometimes I have to.
yeah, he's blocked.
Oh, unmute.
Now he's on.
I can hear you, but your voice is faint.
Okay. Yeah, I know. I don't have the best laptop for. But so I'll just speak a little bit closer to the screen.
We're fine. We can make do.
So the basically any grant, things that are secured with a grant, that should be fine if we can get reimbursed or that process is set up. But if we need to do anything discretionary, we probably will have to wait until we get further guidance from the city.
And is this secondary to the decrease in income for the city due to COVID?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, it's due to the COVID and the, just the normal amount of income revenue coming into the city is decreased. So.
Does this have an impact, Lauren, on, I'm assuming the money that's set aside in and I can't remember what it's called. I think of it as a tree fund.
Mm-hmm.
I assume that's, is that still there in whatever amount it was before COVID began for 2020?
So our budget, our tree fund amount wouldn't be touched right now. That's
okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Definitely not. Mm-hmm.
Well, that may give us some options then, right, for doing some things. Is that true?
I guess we can always check.
Yeah. Well, I'm wondering, does the city feel obliged to, if they're in a tight spot, to use that for something else? Is that an issue?
I can double check that's not
Okay.
something to worry about. But I don't think we're to that point yet. So.
Okay.
But I'm writing that down. So.
Okay. Any other questions in regards to the budget? Okay. So, Julia, the KCD Urban Forestry Grant update.
That's not me.
Oh,
That's Lauren.
My
sorry, Lauren.
week. All good. So right now, we had a Zoom call with King Conservation District, and they said that they're still coming up with so there's two parts of the King County King Conservation District grant. One is the Grace Cole work party and classroom scenario, and then the other is the one that's along the same general area that Julia's working in for the waterworks, a little bit of overlap, a little bit of distinction with the properties. But the basic update is that they're trying to slowly move forward as COVID precautions allow, but it's been delayed. So,
Okay. Okay. Okay, then Julia,
Right.
King County Waterworks Grant update, please.
Yeah. Well, it's been approved by council and signed by the appropriate person at King County, so it's effective as of the 21st of May. It lasts until the 31st of December in 2022. So we've got a lot of time.
Uh-huh.
And it's for $45,000. There is no match required,
Wow.
if you may remember. And so the first thing to do, just to back up a little bit, initially, I think when we last met, I reported that King Conservation District, Mike Lasecki there, was very eager for me to coordinate my project with him. And he actually came out and we looked at some of the areas that he's looking at and that I'm looking at. And he assured me that I would be able to use, King Conservation District sublets 3 WCC, Washington Conservation Corps, crews from WCCs. And he assured me that probably I could use them. This is again, all pre-COVID, that I'd be able to use them this summer. When we were on site, one of his supervisors for another project was there. She suggested that rather than ripping out the ivy, that we go ahead and spray an aquatic herbicide on it. And that way we'd do a lot less disturbance to the soil. And then after it's died in the fall, so to do that in the summer when it's dry, and then potentially in the fall to go in and remove as necessary and plant trees fall and winter. And so that all sounded great. And then about a month ago, I got an email from him saying, oh, actually, if you're going to use one of our WCC crews, we need a memorandum of understanding with the city, and one of our supervisors has to be on site all the time. And his cost was fairly high anyway, or it seemed so at the time. And then we'd be adding on all these other additional costs. And so I basically said, this isn't going to work. So we're sort of cast off on our own again. I've contacted 3 entities that are involved in invasive removal, this type of work. One of which is WCC, to see if they had any crews available, thinking they wouldn't, and in fact they don't. I'm waiting to hear back from Earth Corps. They're the ones who did the initial ivy removal for us a year ago. And he said he'd get back to me in 2 weeks, and that was about a week ago. So I'm waiting to hear from him. And then Mike Lasecki at King Conservation District had mentioned another outfit that does restoration called Applied Ecology. I don't know if any of you are familiar with them. Maybe you are, Gordon, I don't know.
I've heard of them, but I don't know them.
Okay, well, I contacted them and they said absolutely, I sent them the scope of work so that they'd know that, we were pretty legit, he was fairly impressed that we had $45,000 to work with. And I'm meeting with him on site on Friday to take a look and see. And these are professional. He says they're not AmeriCorps workers. These are people who, their crews are only 4 people, but it sounds like they really know what they're doing. He said that they've done a lot of work in Normandy Park. So, you know, but the flip side is they're really much more expensive. But, you know, if they're more effective, you know, if they can do more in the same amount of time, you know, that might be okay. Earth Corps, I think, you know, I haven't gotten a quote from them, and I will when I talk with Bill Brousseau and we look at it again. But to be honest, I wasn't as impressed with what they did for us with the ivy removal, given what the cost had been. So I think they were a little pricey. So it may be that this applied ecology crew would be a good move to come in. What needs to be done potentially, you know, during the dry season in August is to go in and clear around the native plants that are already there, preserve them as best we can, and then go back in and spray, and using obviously an aquatic herbicide, and then go back and start planting and removing, you know, dead ivy as necessary. So that's kind of where we're at. It's some progress. Got pretty stalled by knowing that no one could work, and then, you know, Washington Conservation Corps is so backed up now because they haven't been able to work all spring that when I contacted Liz again, she said, hey, you know, yeah, I said, you probably don't have anything. She said, yes, you're right. We don't. So that is kind of where we're at.
Boy, it sounds like you've really kept on top of it there, Julia. I'm impressed.
Well, it doesn't feel that way all the time, but we're moving along.
Yeah.
But, and this guy, Justin at Applied Ecology, seemed to think that he could help us out this summer.
Oh, well.
I really would like to get started this summer because we're going to have to go back in a year or a little more and reevaluate as to what invasives weren't killed, you know, what we need to do, what we can do.
Do you suppose the applied ecology people they can give you a couple references from the Normandy Park job, just so
if they won't give it to me, I'll just call and find one.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, I would ask for a couple references for sure, because it's an unknown. Earth Corps was, you know, Ashley Adams used to work at Earth Corps, and, you know, but again, I think that they were expensive. And if these guys are equally expensive, he just seemed very businesslike. He said, yeah, this is what we do. We're professionals. This is all we do.
Will any of these folks give you any kind of quantitative either indication or commitment up front about how much they will do? You know, I recognize that things are variable, but they should be able to look at it and give an estimate of an area or something that they should be able to do for that budget.
Right. Well, that's what Bill Brousseau did a year ago when I asked him about doing more than just the ivy. That's where I came up with the 45,000. He was talking about the area that would remove ivy in. So yes, to answer that, yes, I would want, you know, something from whoever we consider as to, you know, how much do you think you can do, you know, in this amount of time? And then of course I can figure out what that cost is going to be just by multiplying. But no, definitely, I think it's important. But you can't do that unless they're on site. So Friday will be a start. And those are the kinds of things I wanted to ask him. You know, when we meet on Friday, you know, how much do you think you can do? You know, what do you want to do with the native plants that are already there? What do you think you can do on the roadside? I mean, there's a huge amount of blackberry on the roadside.
Yeah.
It'd be really nice to knock out and replant in some fashion. Because again, it's all the visual of coming in on Perkins Way, coming into Lake Forest Park, and it just looks awful, at least in my view. And the area does not include where we took the ivy above where the creek goes under the road. And that is where King Conservation District is working. And I'm kind of assuming that if they're working in urban forestry in that area, they're going to go down to the riparian area. I would think, they're not going to stop 3 meters short or 10 meters short of the riparian area.
Is there some reason the city would ask them to do it that way, or
No, it's just that, what I had envisioned with Mike was that, we would do the riparian area and they would do the slopes.
Yeah.
And that way we were augmenting each other.
Mm-hmm.
But he's not looking at doing below where we worked before. For those of you who've been out there with me, from when the non-compliers down, he's only doing a few properties. He's doing quite a few above. And, we could potentially do that, but I've been thinking, and Mike Lasecki at the time agreed, is to start at the non-compliers and work downstream. That might be all we have ability to do. So, there are things that are up in the air, but, and then the other thing is that, unfortunately, I sent out a landowner letter. Were you able to figure that one out ever, Lauren? I think I probably forgot to put it in Word when I sent it to you.
So Tim was able to convert it to me to a PDF, so I was able to.
Okay, so that did get sent out.
Yes.
Again, it was in Windmail, so I couldn't tell what the hell it was. Anyway, that's a draft. I think you all have it. If any of you could comment to me. There we go, thanks. I would appreciate any comments from any of you as to, what I could add to it or alter it. And then, Lauren, the problem we have is getting them notarized because City Hall's not open.
Yeah.
So we would just have to ask people to find their own notaries, I guess.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Or I wonder if there's a way that we could accept like an electronic signature of some sort, like using DocuSign.
Does the city have a DocuSign account that you could use? A lot of organizations have those, and you can electronically sign things.
Right. I will check with Steve and maybe our city attorney and see if we have.
Yeah, if you could. I hadn't known that was even a possibility.
Yeah, and there is, some states allow electronic notary. My understanding, it's pretty new and it's more expensive than regular notary, but possibly we could just use the DocuSign, the electronic signing.
That would be great.
I don't know what the reason is that we need the notary. Is that?
That's the city requirement for the letter from the granting permission for us to be on the property.
That's what I thought. So maybe then the question goes to the city is whether they would allow the electronic signing.
Is that anything you can ask about, Lauren?
Yeah, and I did see Mike D just commented that the court has something like that set up that we may be able to borrow from them or use that program.
Okay, that'd be great.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, yeah.
But I don't want to send the letter out until we get that straightened out. Anyway, so my big question with the letter was, how are we going to do this if we can't get it notarized? But you're telling me there are ways, so that's great.
Yeah, I think we can find a way to,
Okay.
We'll be able to figure something out.
Yeah. And can you scroll down the letter, because I can't access it now, but stop there. Yeah, I don't mention King Conservation District on this. And of course, this is going to I think I need to modify the letter that's going to the landowners that King Conservation District is working with to say that that we are working together.
Okay. Yeah, that would be.
So it'd be a little bit of a different letter for those individuals.
What's missing for me, Julia, are like dates, roundabout dates when this might be.
I'd like to get it. The dates are on the the form that has to be signed.
Yeah, I see that now.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah, and so that's for returning the date. But in terms of the property, in terms of they're allowing us to be on property, that is on the other form, as
Got
I
it.
recall. And so I would like it to run through December of 22. You know, I think that just gets filled in, Lauren, as I remember,
Yeah.
and into the form. And that way, that gives us free reign, you know, the rest of the time. So
Sounds good.
that's pretty much it.
Okay. Thank you for the work that you've done, Julia, as
Yeah.
always.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Do you need any support from us?
Well, I'd like feedback on that letter.
Sure.
Yeah.
When do you need that feedback?
Please.
By when do you need the feedback?
Well, you know, and then as soon as possible. Ideally, it'll prompt me to get going a little better.
Okay. So can we all promise to give Julia feedback by, what is today? Today's Wednesday, by the weekend?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Do we have a copy of that letter? Has it been sent to us or are you going to?
should have.
Yes.
I'll send it out again in Word form so that it's not a PDF and you can annotate on it.
That would be great. Mhm.
Yeah. Sorry, so I have to convert my Pages documents to Word, and sometimes I forget when I attach them.
No worries. No worries.
Okay. Okay, that's about it then.
Okay, thank you. Lauren, it's you again. Tree intern studies update.
Yeah, this was on the agenda from the March meeting, and I will have to just kind of check back in with where we were at on this. It's been a while since I've looked at it. If memory serves me correctly, I think we just needed to review it and make any edits, and then we would be able to give it to you guys. But it's been a little bit on the back burner, so I can try and make some progress on that.
Okay. And the intern, was he or she was done with that project a couple months ago, right? Or
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, so she stopped working, I think in January.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So do you think that's something we can address next at our next meeting?
Yeah, I'll make it a goal to have a more concrete update at least.
Okay. Sounds
Well,
good.
as a board member, what I'd be looking for with that is to know, where do we go from here now that we've had these interns do these studies? How can we manipulate and make use of what they found and what they've put together, you know? And I assume that's the city's goal too, for, having the interns do this work.
Sounds good.
Okay. Tree canopy report update.
Lauren, I think that's you, or
Is that, do we want to know, is that the fellow that was finishing it up for us, is he done?
yeah, he just seemed like he just had some odds and ends to finish up and some
Oh,
documentation.
Yeah, sorry, with Chris. Mhm.
Yes.
Chris, yeah, I couldn't think of his
Yeah.
name.
So, right as the things were kind of shutting down with COVID, he had offered to come by and deliver something in person. And we didn't want to do it at that time because that was right when we were, limiting contact. But now that we're able to do it in a, smart way, I've reached out to him last week and this week to try and reinitiate that drop off of the materials. So that we can, finally close this saga of a chapter book or whatever the metaphor.
Saga, yeah.
This version, this cycle
Yeah.
of the survey. I really would like to see his methodology, because I
Right.
think that is crucial so that we can reproduce it 5 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a really important component.
And I think in the notes from our last meeting, Gordon, you were hoping to get that report by now, and you were going to review it. Obviously, that wasn't able to. We weren't able to do that. So hopefully he'll get that to us before the July meeting then.
Yeah, yeah.
And then Gordon, if you're still willing to review that document once we get it, Lauren, would you mind sending that over to Gordon as soon as you get it?
Yeah, I'll send it over to everybody as well, too.
Oh,
Just
sure.
yeah. Mhm. But
Okay.
yeah, sorry, I thought that was, even I get confused. I thought it was the inventory one, not this one. So that's good.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it'd be nice to finally get our hands on that. It's been a long time.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Preparation for 2020 tree inventory.
That's me. I went back and forth with Mike Woodbury and eventually got an electronic version of the data from the inventory approximately 10 years ago, and they had about 100 10th acre plots. And they'd stratified it into bigger land property parcels and smaller land property parcels. And in my opinion, having been around this board, I think one of the biggest concerns is whether the number or coverage of large trees is increasing or decreasing. And I would propose to the tree board that we remeasure these plots. It would probably take 1 to 2 person months. We might be able to do some of it with volunteers. We might be able to hire a student or 2 students. There'd be some prep work contacting landowners and analyze the data to see what trees have disappeared. And if we're able to correlate earlier trees to later trees, see if we can tell if they've grown or the count has changed. And because I've not yet been able to get a really clear version of the protocol they used for measuring, but I think given that we're only looking at the larger tree, we're mainly interested in the larger trees, I'm not sure that that's too much of a problem. And I'm not sure that we will have enough statistical power because the larger trees are relatively rare to be able to say anything with confidence, but it's the only data we have that's a number of years old, because otherwise, if we're going to go measure something now, it'll be 5 or 10 years till we can remeasure and find change. So that's the conceptual proposal.
Something else that occurs to me in our ongoing conversations about this, it seems the notion of a level of regeneration has come up too.
Yes.
Are young trees appearing? And maybe it's not just any young trees, but it might be, certain types of young trees too, Doug firs or hemlocks or, am I right about that? I have a recollection that we've had some discussion about regeneration, what the regeneration rate is or the evidence of regeneration is too. And I don't know whether that's something that becomes another data point in doing an inventory or whether it's a separate thing.
Yeah, I think that one's easier to do, and we perhaps don't need to be repeating Woodbury's study.
Okay.
Because they're small young trees, you can just go out and put some plots out and say how many little trees are there, and then your threshold is, do they need to be a certain size for you to count them? Like, are you really concerned with things that are, say, 1-inch DBH and not so concerned with little things that are less than 2 feet tall? That's a question. Tim?
Well, and there's Yeah, I think that's a good question. I don't have, I don't have an answer right off the top of my head, but the other question that comes to mind for me is where to be looking. Does it make any sense to look at, areas and what are clearly going to be homeowner managed landscapes where it's likely that anything like that is going to be treated as probably undesirable, So there might be a skewed data there about because homeowners tend to remove tree seedlings. And, so that,
That's an interesting question.
yeah,
I don't know that. Maybe I'm an aberration here, but I let
yeah.
them grow
Well, maybe
until
I'm
they get
just
big enough to be a
presenting my own
problem.
perspective.
Then I whack them.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of areas that are, that are left perhaps somewhat disturbed, but unmanaged
Right.
that we could be looking at to see if there's seedlings coming up.
Yeah, and maybe we would want, I don't know if we'd want to stratify or if that takes more expertise than we want to reliably throw at this problem. And we could just, it's easier to do a random sample and then have
Yeah.
observations. Because you're right, you go in some yards, everything's mowed.
Yeah.
And some are a jungle and some they're clearly tending their yards. And then it's a question of, are they letting tree seedlings grow or not? And then we'd also like to know how many acres are all these other in-between spaces like riparian areas and less managed parks like Grace Cole.
Yeah, and maybe it's those spaces that we have a reasonable expectation that there's some evolution occurring there. That we'd expect to see some seedling recruitment in there and so on,
Yeah.
But those are green belts that we want to maintain, certainly.
Yeah, and that might be a stratum. You want to make sure that trees are coming in there and they aren't just converting to ivy.
Yeah.
But for overall canopy coverage,
Mm-hmm.
Residential units are going to matter a lot.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So just a question of clarification, Gordon. You said that your experience of the board is that what we are interested in is the large trees that we want to be able to.
Well, yeah, an important interest. I wouldn't say the only interest, but a strong interest. I've heard repeatedly over the last couple of years. But anyway, I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, go ahead, please.
No, that was it. Go ahead.
Okay. So if we take that as one of the key factors that we're looking at, what is it that we're trying to prove about that? Because I think our conversations move towards, and I think, Tim, you're kind of hitting on it. Both you and Gordon, you guys are hitting on it. Is that we're looking at the longevity of the canopy.
I have heard from people we have the canopy survey, which does not address how big those trees are, other than in theory they have to be 20 feet tall to count. But I've heard on a number of occasions people have expressed concern that large trees are disappearing. So we could say, are the number of trees that are greater than 30 inches DBH increasing or decreasing in Lake Forest Park? That would be question number one.
Yep.
Question number two might be on certain types of property, on residential versus commercial versus city, or larger versus smaller lot sizes. I don't know. There might be other refinements to that question that would take more effort to manage. But if I only got to collect data, if I'm super limited on what data I have resources to collect, and I could only answer one question, I would throw out, are the number of trees that are at least 30 inches DBH increasing or decreasing within the city limits of Lake Forest Park? Period.
Okay.
And that question was floated through our conversations about changing the code in terms of what the dimensions of exceptional trees ought to be. I don't know that we addressed that. We didn't address it directly, but we certainly were talking around that issue quite a bit. and expressing concern about it when we were talking about changing the exceptional tree dimensions.
Mhm.
So I think it's a legit question to ask and perhaps try to collect some data.
But I'd like to throw that. That's a proposal, and I'd like other people's thoughts. I mean, specifically, is there something else that people would say is a very important thing, a question that we should try to answer? Is there some other question we should be, if we don't get to answer very many questions, is there some other question that people think we should answer?
Can we say anything about groves, like stands of, well, we're not using stands anymore, we're using groves of trees. Is there anything that we can measure on that?
Well, that might possibly be best done through the canopy study,
Okay.
the GIS. I now have an ArcInfo license, so I could play with it.
Mhm.
That's a good question, David. I'm thinking as long as you're out there and, and using the sampling that Gordon described, we might just be able to have our antenna out about the grove situation as we go along. And maybe some questions will come to mind as we get started. It's like, this is what I'm seeing. This presumes a question. Let's have this question in mind when we move to the subsequent properties we're looking at and so on, Since you brought that up, I will tell you I've been in contact with the staff at the Center for Tree Studies at the Morton Arboretum, and they were very interested in this whole conversation we've been having about groves and grove orientation. And I said to them, is it silly for us to be concerned about grove networking in a disturbed forest like we have that's only 50 to 70 years old? And they said, no, you very likely have networked groves of trees under those conditions. But it would be worth testing to see if, what mycorrhizal can be found there. I was surprised they said that. I thought, sounds like just kind of an altruistic hope, that we'd have actually networked groves of such young trees. And they thought, no, that's a totally legitimate issue and is likely to be the case if you have them, tested for networked mycorrhizal organisms. So
Gordon, back to what questions we might be able to address with the tree inventory. In addition to whether trees of a certain size or larger are increasing or decreasing in number, it might also be valuable to know whether the species composition of those large trees is changing over time. Those two types of data, I think, would be complementary in terms of our understanding the tree. The
I
forest.
agree with that, Dick. I think that's a good thing to pay attention to also.
It might say something about which trees, if we see one species, say Douglas fir, increasing in proportion, is that because we have more of that species at the cohort that is growing into the large size, or is it because people are removing other trees preferentially? Is there some, some prioritization by homeowners or people who are removing trees or preserving trees that is species specific?
Yeah, we would certainly have, part of the protocol is you collect the species.
Sure.
And it's a little unclear, but I think they tried to measure everything above 4 inches DBH. So we could certainly, if we had some cutoff of say 10 or 12 inches DBH, we could certainly do analysis of how many trees were in the different size classes and what's the species mix, and then how has that size class distribution, how are the numbers of trees in the different size classes changed in the last 10 years? Yeah, we would be able to do that with remeasuring. Again, I don't know if this sample is big enough that we would be able to draw too many conclusions.
Well, and the sample size is going to be governed by how many people we have that can help us get this done, or,
Well, the limiting factor is how many plots did they measure before, which
yeah.
was ballpark, if I remember correctly, ballpark 100 plots. And then hopefully close to all of those people would allow us on the property to remeasure the trees.
When you say plots, was that each one was a different property then?
Yeah, each
100
one was a
different property?
point with a circle around it. And if I recall correctly, I can send this around. They divided the city into larger land parcel, property parcels, and areas with smaller property parcels. And I don't remember their cutoff, but I have some vague impression that it was like, I don't know, 6,000 or 10,000 square feet.
Oh, uh-huh.
And they tried to have a certain number of plots in the larger and smaller. As far as I can tell, they were randomly located plots, but if they ended up in the middle of a street, I don't know if they measured them. I don't know if they had and see, that's where I don't have data on how did they actually allocate the plots. And maybe it doesn't matter. It's the sample we have. But it does matter when we try to extrapolate from this sample. Like if it was intentionally biased in some way, such as to avoid streets and parking lots, then we would only be able to, like, let's say the rule was the plot center had to be on a residential property. Then we would only be able to extrapolate to residential properties. We wouldn't be able to say something about the city as a whole.
I should think Mike could tell you a little more about his strategy to help sort that out.
Yes, hopefully.
Yeah.
No, I have to say, I've said, do you have the protocol? And he's like, oh, it's on the web. And I'm like, yeah, they got some generic stuff on the web, but what did you actually do?
Yeah.
In super precise detail. So, all right. But if there's, yes, certainly collecting species is part of it. So we would have that data to analyze.
Yeah. That'd be good.
So what's the next step?
Well, if we want to do this, how do we come up with 1 to 2 person months of time? I'm willing to do some, but
Yeah, I'm willing to help with that too.
Sure, me too.
or do we try to get a little bit of money and hire some student out of Doug? I can never remember. It used to be College of Forest Resources. I can't remember what the name is now.
I see. It
College
says
of the Environment, is that what it is?
Yes, something like that.
Yeah.
The College of Environmental and Forest Sciences, CEFS.
Oh,
But
no
you know,
School of Environmental and Forest. It's CEFS.
Oh, that's right. College of the Environment.
College of the Environment, but it's
yeah, College of the
School of
Environment.
Environmental and Forestry Science.
but we should be able to get a student. This is actually something that could be done by a 1-person team unless the city requires a 2-person team, or you think you're going to get better quality. And so I guess, do we have money for that? You know, let's say it would cost us somewhere between $2,000 and $6,000 if we were going to hire a student to go do data collection.
Well, if they were doing it as something out of the school we were just talking about, maybe the fee would be smaller because it'd be contributing to some academic experience, you know?
Yeah, you don't want to pay overhead to the University of Washington.
Yeah.
And we do have an issue where Lauren, you're probably going to mention this, that as you discussed earlier, that, the budgets look down. So
That's why I asked that. Because I know that the tree board used to have some money, but I don't know if it still does. And I don't know if this is what it would want to use it for. Lauren, you were starting to say something.
Yeah, I'll let Doug chime in. Doug, it seems like you'd wanted to say something.
Yeah, just a couple of comments. A two-person crew would probably work better because you can get one person measures, one person writes.
Yeah,
It's also
True.
safer when you're wandering on people's property. So, and
It
I've
is safer.
done a lot of measurement of trees over the years.
Yeah.
Another comment on the regeneration you were talking about earlier. It's very probable that people are selectively regenerating in yards. People are selectively taking stuff out of their yard.
Mhm.
In my yard, if I got a Doug fir or red cedar start growing, I'd be delighted. If I've got another one of these damn tree of heavens, it's going as soon as I find it. And there's a few other things that are coming in my yard that don't last.
Doug, I have cedars and Doug firs if you want to come dig them up for transplanting.
It's a thought, but it's not quite what I had in mind.
All
I'll
right.
be give you some of my tree of heaven if you want it.
That's all right.
And the other thing I was going to say is you might be able to get by remeasuring plots, and you're talking about is it 5 or 10 years you're talking about?
Yeah, it's 10 years.
Yeah, so you might have some decent growth rates in there, and you could begin to, based on the discussion you're having earlier, predict rather crudely how many trees are growing into that 30-year-old size class. I mean, trees go out by way of the chainsaw and by way of just dying on their own, but they do come in from below just by getting bigger. And
Right.
growth rates are probably pretty variable around the city, but with luck, you might get some hint of how fast, what the ingrowth into that 30-inch population is.
Yeah, and in theory, we have the location of those former trees. And so in theory, we can try to see if they still exist or if we have ingrowth. But as you know, that's challenging when you actually try to do it in the field. But it's probably easier to do in a yard than a native forest.
How big did you say the plots were?
I believe they're all 10th acre circular plots. So what's that, 37-foot radius?
Yeah, I mean, depending on where you are, there's a decent chance that if you got a 38-inch, if you had a 38-inch red cedar there now, or 10 years ago, and it's a 45-inch red cedar there now, it's the same tree.
Yeah,
Now that if you got
right.
young Doug fir in there, that are in the 27 to 30-inch range, you might not be able to match them up. But
Right.
a 10th acre is not that big.
It's not that big. So
Yeah,
you're not going to
sorry.
have that many trees over
Right.
30 inches.
Yeah, so
Doug, I was on-
or even close to 30 that you might have grown into there. So
And Doug, I was on mute when we were doing the earlier introductions. I knew you a little bit back when I was at College of Forest Resources in the 1990s. I was setting up the Olympic Natural Resources Center. And since then, one of the things that I've actually ended up using is an article of yours from the 1980s on correcting for log bias in allometric equations.
yeah, that is one of my 2 or 3 most cited articles of all, and it's 1 page.
Yep. And it was probably one of those things that you were just dealing with it, and you wanted to like tell other people they were supposed to deal with it, and you probably knocked it off in a very short amount of time.
Yeah, it was for ecology, so it wasn't that short, but it was not a major intellectual contribution. It was just the main thing about it is that there's 3 or 4 previous articles on the same subject, which were all absolutely impenetrable. And mine was not quite as impenetrable as the other ones. And so people who really should be citing the previous articles.
I don't know, it sounds pretty impenetrable to me.
But, yeah. And interestingly, this is irrelevant to the tree board, but aquatic people use that article all the time. Because apparently phytoplankton, not phytoplankton, zooplankton grow in a way that makes them very useful to analyze using that same technique. So when I look at the citations of that article, most of them are from limnologists. So, utterly beside the point, but you mentioned it.
Yep. So back to the inventory. If anybody thinks of another question later that you think would be very important, Send it out. And I guess Lauren, you'll check into availability for money. And I mean, we could also, if we have no money, we just do however much we have energy for, and next year we do more. It's not like it's going to fall apart if we don't get it all done this summer.
Yeah. Yeah. Gordon, would you mind writing up your proposal,
Sure.
please? I mean, it doesn't have to be anything extensive, but I think that it would be good to put that in our notes so that we can come back to it. And
we'll end up having to use it down the road if we're going to recruit some people to work on this, especially if it's going to be a couple of students.
And I will reach out to Mike Woodbury and try again to get a protocol and any information about selection of plot locations.
yeah. Okay. That's it. Thank you, Gordon. I think that's, if we could get any of it done this year, I think it'd be great, but we'll see what our constraints are.
Yeah, and
it might be useful if we could have a little team from our group to do some of this work as a test, just so we're familiar with how it goes. And then if it needs fine tuning before we bring somebody in to do it, we will have worked out the problems and maybe answered some, provided some answers to questions we hadn't answered thoroughly also. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm willing to test out, an approach to this with you, Gordon, and whoever else.
We might also, we have the old tree data, so we can just rank the plots from had the biggest tree down to had the smallest tree or no trees, and start at the top. And if we only get 10 plots measured, we'll have covered the biggest trees.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll go ahead and put this on the agenda for July.
Sure.
Okay. Good. Annual report, Tim.
Well, we have an annual report that needs a little bit of additional data from Lauren, but I wanted to make sure that you guys are okay with the bulk of what there is there in terms of hitting all the highlights and the important stuff that council people need to see.
Yeah. And so in terms of the data of 2019, I was able to get that today from the computers here at the office. And then there were blank spots here, which I had emailed back in April that information, but I can put that back at the top of your inbox, Tim.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that would be great.
And then
I forgot that.
yeah, I'll go ahead and share this. It's a 4-page data of 4 pages of data from the year, and we had about 182 sorry if you guys can't hear me, about 182 different permits. Mostly it was significant trees that were removed. We had, which is anything under 24 inches DBH, anything under 24, and landmark is over 24. So the totals were, 318 significant and 95 landmark trees. So, but that is in the attachments for people to look at. And for the public, one thing I forgot to, for Mike and Doug that are here, one thing that I forgot to mention was I did include a link on the tree board website that has all of these documents in a PDF, one PDF that you can scroll through. It's under the link to the agendas. So these are available online if you want to look further at them. But
Yeah, so I'd be interested in any omissions or any misrepresentations of any of the activities or events that are reported there.
mm. Well, one thing that is missing is some of these longer term projects where in
Oh, yeah.
the replacement canopy, you'll see the TBD since the permits have not been issued. So like for this one, this is a single family home that's still actually going back and forth with revisions. So that is why there are some TBDs where, it just hasn't been issued yet. So that's one of the main omissions from this. And
Shall we try to have it finalized by the beginning of next week? So if anybody's got anything to add or comment on, to do so by the weekend, that would be helpful.
Well, so the plan is to include the data that you're just reviewing, right?
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So is there any commentary that we want to add to along with that, Tim? That's or we just, I can imagine the council members looking at it and thinking, well, what did we glean from that data?
Well, on the one hand, there may be, yes, but of course, the work that the interns were doing relates directly to that.
Uh-huh.
So, their recommendations and their summaries are something we're going to be coming back with. Maybe it'll be on the annual report for this year rather than this one we're currently reviewing.
Yeah, so the intern studies is from 2018 and 2017, I think. So the data that we were just viewing is the 2019 summary.
Yeah, but remember, they're looking for things that we can, how to make greater use of that information too.
Yes.
Yeah. So we'll be able to come to a range of different conclusions based on, using approaches that the intern projects have recommended, I would think also.
So maybe that's what we say, is that it's pending that the tree board will, look at that data in relationship to the information that we, receive from the interns' work.
Yeah, because otherwise the data speaks for itself. You can see how many trees in these different categories, we're dealing with, but they need some help. And well, what does that mean in terms of how our management of the community canopy and forest canopy is going? And everything we just talked about, the inventory and the intern reports, all that, helps us provide more information back to the council so that all those numbers, we can tell them that it shows these various things. It isn't just the face of the numbers themselves,
Mm-hmm. Okay. So the next steps in regards to the annual report, you want our feedback?
Yeah, I just want to finalize it so that it's not missing anything significant or anything has been misreported there.
What would be a good timeline for that?
Well, by this weekend, I suppose, that would be good. You guys can take a look at it.
Okay.
I can tell you right now that rather than submitting a Waterworks grant application, that we were approved one.
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
For the other one. So yeah, okay, we'll try and get you that feedback. I can include kind of a executive summary of the main bullet points of
Okay.
what,
Okay.
how many significant, how many landmark. Maybe another point, if I have time to find it, is how many exceptional trees were applied for to be removed that, weren't allowed because they were exceptional. That might
I
be
think
something.
that would be very useful for some.
Yeah, that's a good statistic.
Because that allows them to see the overall impact of the ordinance.
Yeah, that's a significant part of the code. It'll be interesting to see how it's how it's been imposed.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Anything else on this for the time being?
Not for me, thanks.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Tim, for putting that together.
Okay.
Okay. Memo for tree code amendments. So Lawrence sent out the draft memo that we will submit to the council as essentially a request that they consider our code requests. And Lauren, you had some background information that you were going to provide in terms of timeline and the next steps in terms of involving the city council.
Yes. So in terms of what we're able to do right now, once we get this memorandum finalized and where we want it, then we can go ahead and send it on to the mayor and the council, and they'll probably be able to talk about it at what's called the committee of the whole meetings that they have on Mondays, I believe. And right now, at least with the phase that we're in for the stay-at-home order, the council is only allowed to talk about business that is, there's two certain phrases. I think it's like regular or like imminent. Like it either has to be something that was already ongoing prior to COVID, or it's something that like has to be dealt with right now. And so this, unfortunately, like a new code change wouldn't necessarily fall into what they're able to cover right now in terms of new topics. Once, if they could review this memo and give us feedback, but in terms of making any steps further beyond that, which would be like having the public hearing and diving into it, I guess, in more depth, they probably won't be able to do that. And then additionally, once they are able to expand what they're able to review at council meetings, we do have some other code changes that they want to prioritize, and there's about 3 or 4 of them. There's some sign code changes, the like wireless facilities on buildings. Obviously, the town center is one that they're still able to discuss right now because it was started beforehand. So all that to say that this memo we can focus on and make sure it's where we want it, because we do have a little bit more time to get things together, if that makes sense.
Did we
So-
still need some justification supplied, David?
We do.
Okay.
And so Lauren, to your point that we do have a bit more time to work on this, I still think that we should give ourselves a primer, right? Let's get this done by July, which but you're right, that does give us a bit more time. So if you scroll down, essentially, you guys, this is just a draft, and I just started putting it together. But what it does is just identifies where we're requesting that they consider code changes. And what we list the changes, and then giving a comment of justification. Why are we suggesting making this change?
Related, this is purely a technical question. I thought that these changes were presented to council in the form of showing the text that's being deleted and the text that's being.
And that'll be provided to them as well. This is just like essentially a cover page.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I would be inclined to have the 1 paragraph cover memo and then have the actual change, just to reduce the quantity of stuff that people have to go through.
So you're suggesting that we just so what we see there now is the we could highlight the changes, and then say attached is the document that shows all
Those
the
are the changes. Yeah.
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 What about justifications? How do we?
Oh, that's a good idea. Lauren, how do they normally handle that?
That I would have to look into a little bit more. And I can try and find a previous example of
Sure.
what it looked like. I know that for the town center, they, the planning commission will, they send a memo but I'll have to look into what the format of the justification.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we should we should match whatever format they're used to.
Mm-hmm.
But we should match whatever they're used to.
Okay.
Because sometimes it's easier to see them in line. Sometimes they want the document and then a second document with the justifications. I could see also having conceptual categories and then the justification for each one. But I don't know. I used to work for a state legislature, and if I actually wanted people to read this stuff, it had to go on one side of one page.
So
I think good point.
This memo was earlier in May, and this is to the council from the Planning Commission, and it's about a specific piece of the town center code. And so this is the format that they had for it. So yeah, pretty short and sweet. Two major
And conceptual.
Yeah.
Organized by the conceptual points.
Mm-hmm. And then there was, there was all of these were the documents that they discussed at the meeting. So not quite what they sent to council, but
yeah.
Yeah, we're probably looking at. Okay, so here's something from Steve showing so that's not quite as useful, but and this is, if you wanted to review it, it's on the town center process page here, but I can go ahead and send it out to everybody, the memo.
Okay, so then if it's a one-page memo, what is it that we want to say to the council?
I think groves are a point, and I think some of the other factors about having the arborist decide to make the process, maybe, I don't know if we want to highlight about the technical reviews, and just saying we're streamlining that process to better match what we're actually doing, and it retains the arborist, the city's ability to require additional reviews. And I'd have to scroll through the whole thing to see if there were any. Those are the 3 points that I recall, but that's kind of what I'm thinking, is we'd only get to make 3 to 5 points in that cover memo, but I think that's all.
Well, we also have the change in the exceptional tree dimensions.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got
That's
that.
right. That's a big one. That's probably
big one.
the most.
The groves, as you mentioned, there was also there's that one item about language on topping.
Yep.
Yeah. Topping is clarified, but that could be a one-line mention.
Yeah, there's the changing the dimensions on the exceptional trees is a
So
big
we might have 6 or 7 points,
yeah.
but we should be able to fit them into one page.
Then we had the piece on native trees, an emphasis on native trees.
Yeah.
when it came to replacements, that segment on replacements. Yeah.
And I had to reread that again. When I first looked at it, I was a little worried that we were making it hard to do the right tree in the right place. But looking at rereading it about 3 times, it gives flexibility. It just requires the city agree to it.
So, so then what we need to do is work on the justification. We have some justification for groves. I unfortunately I don't have I can't access my notes on our justification for changing the definition of exceptional trees. So basically we all need to work on this. On the justification again, and I apologize for that because I did take.
Yeah, I had looking at that. I know we'd had conversation on all that to justify all of them,
Yeah.
but I'd lost the thread and forgotten a lot of it in the intervening period of time now. So when we're talking about changing, for instance, the changing of the dimensions for exceptional trees, there was a lot of conversation about the character of the forest and Lake Forest Park being vested in trees that are, smaller than what the exceptional tree current dimension is.
Mhm.
And that doesn't mean they're less important. It means that they're important to be preserved. Otherwise we lose pardon me, we lose the character of the forest if we only go with the biggest trees, only the ones that are most exceptional. We could still end up with a scattering of big trees and nothing else. So we had some justification that went along that line, but I don't remember if that was, that's kind of very general and wordy too.
Well, I think at one point during one of our meetings, I had created a document where I had kind of put in what everybody thought and why. So I just wrote down on my to-do list that I'll try and resend that out. So
Okay.
That would be great. Okay.
Yeah, that was very helpful, Lauren, because you use different colors at different times to highlight it.
We also need Ashley to provide the justification again for that change in the, that particular inspection that needed to be done and so forth. The geotech report
right.
issue.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. Then so let's plan on having a good draft for July. And I will own putting the memo together based on this feedback. But I do need all you guys' help in defining, making sure that we get the appropriate justification for each of these points.
Good.
Okay. Anything else about this for the time being?
Not here.
Okay. Lauren, do you mind going back? Well, I think there's just one more item on our agenda for new business.
Out was the last thing on our agenda, and I have a little bit of the blurb here that we included, and it went out in the e-newsletter as well, and this was something that David came up with, and basically every month, so at the July meeting we'll talk about this again, and the goal is to try and get residents to remove ivy from their yard as long as it's not in a steep slope area. And then they can share pictures of them removing it, or how many bags they did, and then it will be kind of like a contest, and every month we'll share either the best 3, or depending on how many we get, just go ahead and share what we received. And we did say that there would be a winner at each month, and they would get a monthly prize, or a prize. And so we can kind of think about what that will be. We were thinking it would be some type of maybe native plant that would replace ivy as a ground cover. So looks like
How do
Doug,
you determine the winner? Is it square feet or what?
so that's up to us, depending, they can, when we get an email submission, the blurb directs them to email me with their photos, and then I can share that with the group at the meeting, and we can decide, is it based on enthusiasm or, the square footage of what they removed. So.
I have a
Yeah.
vested interest. I have about 500 square feet of ivy left, and that's the only remaining ivy in my house. And I've been contemplating ripping it out.
You gonna do it?
Oh, eventually, but will I get to it this year? I don't know. I got about 100 square feet already this year.
Yeah, in terms of the prize that might be offered, having done this a couple of years ago, maybe a free trip to the shoreline, the place where you get rid of your truck full of ivy.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
How about a pair of loppers and a saw?
Gloves would be good too.
Yeah,
I like the replacement plants idea.
I do too. Yeah.
Yeah, it'd have to be flats of something, Yeah, not one. Here you go, one strawberry.
Well, so it could be that, and then maybe we provide some sort of certificate of congratulations signed by the mayor.
Sure.
Some recognition. Maybe they're photographed in the next newsletters, or on the Facebook page. And
Maybe we ought to have somebody from the Stewardship Foundation sign it. Sorry, I couldn't resist. We had a little, for the rest of you, we had a little go around with the Stewardship Foundation about their not being consulted on the Ivy Out contest.
And granted, I just to admit, it was a lapse on my part. I really should have thought about.
I didn't think about it either.
Foundation, because it is one of the. For many years, they have taken great strides in removing ivy from Grace Cove, from various from all of Lake Forest Park, and so we should definitely. It's for our agenda. When we talk about the agenda for July, I'll talk to you a little bit about involving the Stewardship Foundation. But yeah. Yeah. So really, so then what, Lauren? I guess we haven't received any submissions just quite yet, or any questions for the most part, right?
Yeah, we did receive a question from Mark Phillips, the council member, about steep slopes. Unfortunately, the ivy he wants to remove is on a steep slope, so that requires a little bit more of a permitting process.
Okay.
But yeah, since it's only June 3rd, we haven't received any submissions yet, but I could see if we can do a social media plug on Friday to try and say, hey, it's the weekend. Don't forget to participate in the Ivy Out.
Yeah, I think that's good. That's good. And in retrospect, I guess we should have included blackberries or anything that's considered noxious as opposed to just the ivy, but next time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sounds good.
Ivy's an accessible weed for a lot of people to attempt. Blackberries another matter.
Yeah.
That was
okay.
That was that. So, anybody have any front lines that they would like to talk about?
No, I told you about the Center for Tree Studies of the Morton, so I'm kind of jazzed about that.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the next step around that, Tim?
Well, I don't know. I think I've been mulling over this idea of finding out how to maybe have somebody take some samples and do some assessments about the mycorrhizal content of some segments of the, a heavily treed section of the city or several sections. I don't know. See what's in there.
It'd be interesting.
It would. I think it'd be meaningful. I don't know what there must be labs or people that do that for a fee or something, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, will you keep us posted?
Yeah, well, and the other part of that is that this contact now, I'm hoping maybe I'll hear things from these guys who are now aware of the fact that this is something we're doing. And I asked them for any information they knew of any other communities that were taking up this kind of an orientation or showing a concern about mycorrhizal networks and tree groupings that they have, like Tigard, Oregon is sort of oriented that way. And, so they've just, been alerted. And now that I have that connection, maybe I'll hear from them if they find interesting references and so forth.
Okay. Good. I did want to come back real quickly to the work plan. As you all know, we've been delayed at least, by 3 months, and we did pass on our, we did accept our work plan from at our last meeting, but maybe what we can do is review this work plan as homework for July, and determine if there's anything that we feel like we're just with integrity we're just not going to be able to get to, and maybe we revote, take a vote again on this work plan.
I'll say if I'm going to work on the inventory, I'll scratch. I was down here to do a proactive forest management plan, and we'll take that one off and replace it with inventory.
Okay. So let's take that up in July.
All right.
I want to make a shout out to Dick about the tree walk edit he did for the up there by the reservoir. Yeah, it turned out very nice.
Yeah.
Lauren, is that something that's up online yet or available?
Yes, it was publicized in the newsletter as well as something to check out.
Right.
And it is on the website too. So.
Julia helped me with that, by the way.
Yeah.
A little bit. I didn't know what the trees were. I needed to identify what the heck is a black walnut.
Okay.
Oh, go for it, David.
Speaking of that, Dick, did you know that all the western cypresses are now considered Hesperocypress?
Yes.
I didn't know that. I just learned that a little bit ago.
There's been a lot of changes in Cupressaceae taxonomy.
Yeah.
Hesperos, what cypresses are you talking about?
All the Western Hemisphere cypresses, like Cupressus bakeri, Cupressus macrocarpa, and Cupressus arizonica.
A bunch of them in California. None of them get up into the north.
They're all now.
I don't know about them.
Yeah. Is it Hesperocypress or Hesperocupressus?
I think it's Hesperocypress.
Yeah.
I don't. Now that you mention, I don't know.
I don't either. I've forgotten already.
And our Alaska yellow cedar is Calotropsis.
Well, talk about an ongoing debate and an argument.
Yeah.
That's been going for 12 or 15 years now.
Just to show you guys. So if you go to departments and then tree permits and information here, and then on the side here is a link to the tree walks. And then you can see this updated third tree walk with pictures.
Great.
So, then I just wanted to share that really quickly. I did include in the attachments a summary of the March permits as well as the May permits. We didn't take in any in April due to the COVID restrictions, we were still trying to figure out what we wanted to do. And so May was actually not as busy as we thought. We did have some potential code enforcement. You can see this last one here. It has a question mark next to the hazard tree. So we're still investigating whether that met the emergency action threshold or if it is a code enforcement case. And then one thing I also wanted you guys to be aware of, depending on when phase 2 of the stay-at-home order starts, a while back I had talked about the lot along Ballinger Way, right after you pass 40th, where there's going to be a new home developed, and they had applied to remove, I think it's over 40 trees. So that is finally, those permits finally got issued to build the home. And so that tree removal will probably happen, if not before our July meeting, sometime in July or August.
Yeah, we're going to hear a lot about that.
So
Okay.
those are my updates.
Okay. So, so July, the July meeting agenda, just real quickly. So, as Tim and I were mentioning about the Stewardship Foundation, Jean Robbins, who's been working on the McClear, well, she's with the Stewardship Foundation. She's been working on taking out ivy, and she'd like to come and talk to us about how we can be working more in cooperation. So she will likely be our guest for the next meeting.
Sounds good.
Okay. And then also on the agenda will be the we'll revisit the work plan, strike some items that aren't considered, that we're just not going to get done given our time frame at this point.
I'll get a proposal for inventory work out before the meeting.
Thank you.
So, and Lauren, if you haven't heard from me in 2 weeks, ping me.
Also on the agenda will be so Lauren, you're going to send us the justifications that you had taken the notes for the code changes, and we'll work on the memo and have a draft by July. Finish that up as well. I'm just trying to read my notes here.
The annual report, I'll send the summary of the 2019 data, and then I'll send Tim the feedback, and
Sounds good.
Yep. And then of course, oh, and then Lauren, anything that we learned, received from Chris, hopefully we'll be able to review that prior to the meeting as well.
now I'll have another budget update clarifying, can we, spend money from the tree fund, and do we need to, be concerned about any other spending going on? So,
Okay.
And can we use it for the inventory?
Okay. And Julie, I'm sure that you'll want to talk about the grants or the progress.
Yeah.
As
Yeah.
well. Okay. Anything else? Oh, hopefully we'll have some new members in July.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so speaking of that, we should probably look at, I think I've been chair for well over a year, which I'm fine, but I do know in the bylaws that we got to address that at a certain point. So,
I'll look into that.
okay.
Good point.
I just want to make one quick note here to Tim. If you're going to look more into the mycorrhizal business, you might want to talk with Bob Edmonds, who's retired from CEFS.
Yeah.
He's pretty knowledgeable about mycorrhizing, and he can tell you what is likely to be going on in our local forests and groves.
Good idea. Yeah, I know who Bob is. Yeah,
Okay. his email, well, yeah, I'm sure it is. His email is probably still bobe@uw.edu.
Oh, okay. Yeah, even though he's retired, he still has that email address. Okay.
Yeah, well, hold it. Whether or not he reads it is another question, but that's,
All right.
but anyway, he's knowledgeable. And my impression is that most conifers end up getting mycorrhizal sooner or later.
Hmm.
But that's what he could tell you 10 times better than I could.
Yeah.
Okay.
With that, then we could go ahead and adjourn. And Doug, thank you for being here with us this evening. Obviously, we would like for you very much, well, extend an invitation to you to on a long-term basis.
Okay, I'll fill out the form. I think this sounds like it might be fun, so I'll go ahead and fill out the form, which Lauren I think she sent me. Yeah, she did. So.
Oh, good. Super.
That'd be
And-
great, Doug.
And everyone, thank you so much. It's good seeing you again. I've missed you.
Everyone stay safe.
Yeah.
Thank you. Shall we make a motion to adjourn?
So
I
moved.
so move that we adjourn the meeting.
Okay, and I think I heard a second from Richard,
Yeah.
or okay. Bye, everyone.
Adios.
Wow.
Lauren, thank you so much for organizing this for us.
Yeah.
No problem. See you in July.
Okay.
All right. Bye now.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.